I think we're going to go ahead and get started. We may have a couple more people coming in a moment, but if we don't start, we don't get to cover the stuff. And I'm notoriously slow because we don't cover a lesson each week. We cover a lesson however long it takes. But we're going to continue. Remember, we're kind of in the middle of God doesn't judge us based on performance. And that's good news because our performance isn't all that great anyway, you know. So we're looking at the Ten Commandments because those show us that our performance is not what it needs to be. And we're looking at honor, the fourth commandment. And remember, there's two different ways of counting. So this is the traditional way. The other way's fine too. I'm not criticizing anything, but just fourth commandment, honor your father and mother. And I have to tell you, what Luther wrote in his explanation irritated some people. So he says, we are to fear and love God so that we do not despise or anger our parents. And, you know, that clearly is under the fourth commandment. But then it says, and others in authority. But respect, obey, love, and serve them. Now, parents, you know, we expect we should do what our parents ask us to do and, you know, definitely love and serve them. But who are the other authorities in our life that Luther throws in here? And some might want to say, oh, he shouldn't have thrown other authorities in. We're going to look at that. But who are these other authorities?
I think it's who you work for. And a lot of people at work disagree with me. I am notorious. They tell me to do something, I do it. I'm not one of those people that buck up and say, no, I mean, within reason.
Yeah, if they tell you to do something that you physically can't or is immoral, don't do it. Yeah.
And a lot of people at work disagree, but I was brought up.
So yes, your boss is one of those authority figures. So we got parents are authority figures, especially when you're young. Boss at work. Who else?
Law enforcement.
Law enforcement. Okay. Yeah. And I'm going to put this. I was saying this for you. Grandparents. Grandparents. They're authorities too. I'm a grandparent now, so I'm going to add the. All right. Who else? Teachers. If you're at school, you know what? You do your homework because you're asked to. That is part of it. What else?
Coaches.
A coach certainly would be an authority figure.
Teaching or telling you how to do something.
Yeah.
Patty said something, but I agree with her adult is the government.
All right, so yes, the government is an authority figure. So what I want you to do, we're going to look at this and then we'll talk about it. Go to 1748, which is Romans 13:1. So in these large print Bibles, 1748, which is Romans 13:1. Now you'll see why Luther included other authorities in this, because he's taking in the whole of Scriptures and tying it in with God's commands. But Romans 13, verse 1 says clearly, everyone must submit himself to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God. All right, so now I want to talk about that. So Luther includes authority figures, as you know, not just parents here, but among those authority figures, we have to include government. Now, let's talk about the tough stuff, okay? What if you have a corrupt government that's asking you to do wrong things? So, for example, Hitler's Germany was commanding soldiers to exterminate Jewish people and gypsies and handicapped people and all kinds of people. Should they have done that? No. So what we do is we say, yes, we obey the authorities God puts above us unless they ask us to go against the highest authority, which is God himself. So I always tell my confirmation kids, I'll say, now if your parents, let's say if your dad orders you to kill your sibling, you can't do it. And they say, oh no, I want to, really? You know, no, we don't do that stuff. So we have a higher authority. Now, so I mean, and there's, well, I'll tell you a funny story. So I was a vicar, a student pastor out in Montana. Montana did not have a speed limit for a lot during the daytime hours for a lot of years, like decades, because they had very few towns, lots of open roads, very little traffic, not many people lived there, you know, and so you just went whatever you wanted to. At night there was a speed limit, you know, which makes sense. So. But they reluctantly had to put in a speed limit because of, remember I think Jimmy Carter was president, they ordered all high speed limit to be 55 miles an hour. And they said to the states, if you don't do this, we're not going to send you federal highway dollars. And Montana needed those federal highway dollars, so they made recommended speed 55 miles an hour. So most people in Montana pretty much didn't worry about the speed limit because they were used to doing whatever they wanted to do. And I've got more parts to this coming up. But so I would go to, we had to travel a couple hours to get to the nearest church from where I was. And a lot of times I'd pass another pastor on the way to the conference. And one time he said to me, he said, the fourth commandment applies to speed limits too. Boy, and that hurt. So he got me thinking about things, you know. And by the way, I did get the only speeding ticket I got in Montana. Now here's the neat thing. Montana really didn't want to have a speed limit, so they made it 55. But if you got pulled over for speeding, you got a ticket that the fine would be $10, no points, and just put a check in the mail and mail it into them. No court costs. And so for truckers and stuff, yeah, I mean, they get pulled over 3-4 times. They don't care. Montana doesn't like federal government. You know, that's kind of the. But so, you know, the government is our boss, kind of. So we want to do what they ask unless they're asking us to do something that goes against our faith. That's the key thing. So, you know, speed limit, I've looked, believe me, I've looked in this Bible. I can't find anywhere it says you must go as fast as you possibly can. I'm wanting to find that, but yeah, no. So yeah, that's all part of what we do. Now, why is this important? Why is obedience to parents as first authority figures and then our other authority figures, why is that important?
Set a foundation of rules.
Yeah, and society falls apart without it. And if you think about it, we kind of are on the verge of that at times where I get to decide my own rules. So if we take over downtown Portland or, you know, we're going to have a zone, no law enforcement are allowed in, we'll loot and burn and destroy and do whatever we want to. And then, you know, we just let them do it. That's chaotic. That's, you know, life falls apart the way it's meant to be. We have to have that. You can think of a military unit. If the troops don't do what they're commanded to do, it's guaranteed we'll lose that battle. You know, they've got to kind of forget about self and put the unit ahead of themselves and do whatever they need to to stop a common enemy. So life is that way. And the sad part is, especially in today's world where, you know, it's getting almost rare for moms and dads who have fathered and or brought children into the world to still live together. You know, most of the time now, the parents don't, you know, they may be remarried, but it's just, and the number of fatherless homes, there's something, especially young men need a father, because without it, they kind of just never learn the respect for authority that we need. But this is a foundational thing. Society needs this for it to function the way it's meant to. And so when God commands stuff, he always does it for a reason. He's not just doing it to take joy out of our life. And we need that respect for authority. I didn't like it when I had to do what my parents always said, but by learning to do that, you learn to obey your boss at work. And by the way, work falls apart if people don't do what the boss asks,
Well, in that case, Don would never do that.
Yeah.
For teachers too.
Well, yeah, teachers have.
Authority, because the parents sometimes are so quick to defend the kid.
Yeah, and that's a big difference from when I went to school, because when the principal called my mom and dad, they didn't take my side. I'm just telling you, they did not. And nowadays we want to, well, I know it wasn't really wrong, and you're being unreasonable, and the problem's in the school, the problem's in the teacher, and we've got to teach them. If your teacher asks you to do it, you do it. You do your best. You turn it in on time. By the way, in college, no one nags you about it. You won't make it through college if you don't. All these are foundational things, and really society's fallen apart because we no longer insist on. But it's all got to start in the home. No one else can teach that. The home's got to be where it starts. All right, any other comments or questions on fourth commandment? I'm not going to try to beat these all up, but if you ever drive above the speed limit when you know it, you are not perfect. And I'm confessing that I am not perfect, so I'm confessing that. As I get older, I'm getting more mellow a little bit, so I'm going a little closer to the speed limit most of the time now, but I still am...
Keeping it under 15?
Yeah, well, we have a lot of police officers that come to this church, and one of them said his saying is 8 you're fine, 9 you're mine. So I go 8. Because that's the unofficial speed limit, So, and I'm not justifying that attitude. Quite honestly, I'm wrong. And yet, when I'm behind, then it's easy in my mind to do it anyway, but I should not. All right, fifth commandment. You shall not kill. Now, I used to assign my 8th graders to keep track of how many of the 10 commandments they kept perfectly for a week. And here's the good news. All of them came back and said they kept this one perfectly. This is before we've studied them, Before we've looked at what they really mean, they said, yeah, nope, I didn't kill anyone this week. Yeah, baby. And and I'm feeling good for myself because if they are people who like to kill, then I'm not sure I'm going to have homework anymore. But so then let's look at what Jesus actually said about this. So look at 1491. We'll look at this for 2 commandments here. So don't lose it right away. That's Matthew 5 on page 1491 in the large print Bibles. I still don't want to call them giant print Bibles because they're just the right size is what my eyes tell me. Definitely not giant. So this is part of the Sermon on the Mount. And by the way, this whole couple chapters is all red because this is Jesus preaching probably the greatest sermon that's ever been given. But Matthew 5, starting at verse 21 on 1491. You have heard that it was said to the people long ago, do not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. Now look so that's the commandment, and people said, yeah, didn't kill anyone. And then he's going to explain the heart of the commandment. But I tell you that anyone who is angry with his brother will be subject to judgment. Again, anyone who says to his brother, Raka. Now notice there's a little C there, footnote. What does it say? What does that word mean? Because that's not a word we know. It's Aramaic. A word of contempt. They didn't translate it on purpose because it's kind of a vulgar thing. And you can come up with any number of vulgar things that we say sometimes to people. It would be like that. Again, anyone who says to his brother, Raka, is answerable to the Sanhedrin. But anyone who says, you fool, will be in danger of the fire of hell. Now, here's what's interesting. You can break thou shalt not murder, not just with physical actions, but with thoughts and with words. And again, I am being transparent here, and I'm telling you I am not perfect. I am a sinner trying to do better to bring glory to God's name. But my kids led me to repent because we were studying this, and then They said, but Dad, you call people you idiot and you fool all the time. And I don't to anybody's face. You know where that was? In the car when they can't hear me, but my kids would hear me. And you know what? I'm still training my brain. Have any of you noticed that people run red lights? You know, when your light turns green, the first thing to do is pause.
Yeah.
Look both ways and wait till the 4 other cars go through before you know, and that's real true. Or the people who hit their brakes and turn, but you never gave you a chance to know that they were going to be hitting their brakes because there's this new invention. I guess it's so new we're not used to it. Turn signals are really an incredible thing. Yeah, yeah. So you know, and I would be all irritated because, you know, that's a daily thing when you're driving pretty much. But my answer should not be, you fool, because with my words, I'm training myself, and if I say that in my car out loud, you know what, sometimes I'm going to say that out loud when I'm not in my car. How, you know, what you do as a habit begins to take more and more control. So it's not my place to call them an idiot, even though that was so easy to do. It's my place to thank God that I didn't crash into them, I didn't get hit, that I'm okay, you know. And then maybe it's my place to think about all the times I forgot to use my turn signal and started pulling out when there was a car in my blind spot, you know, because I'm guilty of being an idiot probably more than anyone else. So, so with our thoughts, he says you're angry. If you get upset with someone, what does God want you to do?
Yeah, walk away.
Well, 1, calm down. So we don't need to go to fisticuffs or something like that. 2, talk to them. That's not yell at them, by the way. Talk to them one-on-one and work it out. Be reconciled with your brother. The goal is not to stay angry, to hold a grudge, and you know, I'm not going to have anything to do with you then.
I want to tell you, since I've been coming and really read the Bible, I had a friend who didn't call me, didn't come to Gary's service. Well, I was so angry, I just wrote him off. I just did not, I blocked him, I didn't want nothing to do with him. Well, her stepson was only 33 and he died.
Oh my goodness.
And I reached out to her last night and just felt it on my heart. So I reached out to her and told her I was sorry. She wrote me back and apologized to me, said she'd been thinking about me all year. She was so sorry. She had things going on, and you know she couldn't.
But see, that's what I'm talking about. And if you're wronged, what we want them to do is come and grovel before us on their knees, beg for forgiveness. I'm going to tell you, if you're waiting for that, that will probably never happen. But you know, God doesn't wait for us to grovel and come to Him begging forgiveness. He reaches out to us long before we even kind of know most of our sin. But that's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. And it's not easy to forgive. Let's just talk about that. To forgive does not mean forget. You know, quite honestly, I still remember things. Gavin, no one's ever picked on you at school, have they? Yeah, they have, yeah. Well, guess what? And that's everybody, unfortunately. And I still remember things I was called on, names I was called at school, you know. And I'm going to tell you, I'm not upset about it. If I see, well, I don't see hardly anybody I went to school with because I live a long way away from where I grew up. But if I did, I would have no problem, you know, laughing and getting caught up and stuff like that. But to forgive is not to forget. It's to treat them as if the wrong didn't happen. It's to treat them knowing that I make mistakes all the time. I got to give them a pass if they make a mistake too. And I can be wronged and still start the process of restoring the relationship. So my worst 2 examples of holding a grudge, there were 2 brothers up in Bach, Michigan, where I was a vacancy pastor, that had a dispute about inheritance stuff when their mom and dad passed away. And for 30 years they had not talked. You know, golly, you know. When my dad passed away first, then my mom, but I didn't care whatever. I think my sister was the executor, whatever. I figured she's going to treat me fair. She's a nice Christian lady. I'm not going to worry about it. I didn't, there are a couple things I didn't mind getting, but if somebody else wanted them, I would have let them take it because it's not a big deal. I want to remember my mom and dad for the love they gave me, not for the physical stuff. By the way, I got a bag of sermons because I always sent my dad a copy of the sermons I preached, and he'd read it at night. That was his devotion, type thing. And we had the fire, so I lost files of old sermons and stuff. But I got back, not all of them, but probably a couple hundred sermons. So that was the one thing I was really glad. No one else wanted, I guess. It was still available for me. But yeah, so with our thoughts, where we want to hold on to anger, with our words, with our actions that don't result in physical death but hurt someone. You remember there used to be, guys used to do this, I hope they don't anymore. They'd come up and punch each other in the shoulder, and you're not supposed to flinch. I'm going to tell you, that hurts. I want to flinch if you punch me in the shoulder. And I wasn't as strong, so when I punched them back, nobody flinches because, what was I going to do? But that's stupid. Tripping someone in the hallway. I'm just going with school examples right now. That's breaking the fifth commandment. Anything that hurts or harms your neighbor breaks the commandment. So, and notice what is keeping the commandment. We are to fear and love God so that we do not hurt our neighbor in any way, but help him in all his physical needs. You remember the parable of the Good Samaritan, the two people that passed by the guy that was dying and just needed someone to help him. Those two people broke the fifth commandment. The third one fulfilled it. When we see someone that has needs and we have the resources to help, okay, we need to help. Because keeping the command, there's always two parts to a commandment: what you don't want to do and what we're being called to do. And we're being called to love one another like Christ loves us. We're being called to watch out for each other and help each other when it's the rough times of life. So like you reaching out to your friend when she lost her son, that's beautiful. That's fifth commandment being lived out. And our goal is not just to not do the wrong, it's to do the right. By the way, I'm going to tell you, there's two types of sins. Sins of commission, that's the bad stuff I go out and do. And then sins of omission. What are those? No, thinking is still doing the bad stuff. It's the sins that are the opportunities God gives you to help people, and you don't do it. So I can think of someone's vulnerable, hurting, and ask a question about Jesus, and I decide I'm not going to tell them.
I have a neighbor that if I went to apologize to him, he would run me off.
Yeah, and so the scripture says to be at peace with everyone as much as it is up to you. Meaning there are people, sometimes we shake the dust off our feet and we move on, but you can keep praying for them, because when someone's kind of ugly to you and everybody else, the problem's in there. And, don't ever think, oh, this guy's so mean to everyone, and don't take it personal. That's an opportunity for prayer because that person's hurting. You think about my father-in-law, his nickname was Grumpy because he liked to complain, and it was just a funny thing, but when he was in a lot of pain, he was always the same to the people at church, but to his daughters, he would be kind of gruff. Now, it's not that he was mad at them. He was frustrated by the things he was going through. And so that pain made him a little more unpleasant to be around sometimes. Not mostly, but occasionally. And I'm that same way. I've only had a couple migraines in my life, but when light hurts and your hair hurts, and hairs don't have nerve endings, so I don't know how that works, but sound hurts, everything hurts. If you talk to me, I'm probably not going to be super polite. I'm probably going to be gruff.
And I remember you telling me that one time, because Patty used to just breeze through her surgery, be the best person coming out. And one
And I love Patty, by the way.
I-
I'm saying it publicly. There you go.
And I remember you telling me that, and I tried to always remember that.
Yeah.
You know, because people that are in pain tend to be more ill. Yeah.
Well, they do. And again, if our job is to love like God does, when we're hurting, God reaches out even more so to us. And by the way, that's truth. That is truth. You know, the footprints in the sand poem, that's what God does. You know, when we really need him, he's there. And he's there even if we think we don't need him, and because we always do. But yeah, so fifth commandment is actually one of the toughest ones to keep, because it's easy to think the wrong things, it's easy to say the wrong things, and it's easy to want to hurt those who are rude to us or hurt our feelings or anything like that. So, but the call is to love like Christ loves. All right, sixth commandment, you shall not commit adultery. And again, we're going to look at what Jesus says. So on that same page, Matthew 5, Sermon on the Mount, 1491, at the verse 27, it starts. But you have heard that it was said, do not commit adultery. But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. And then he goes on and says, this stuff scares me, and if your right eye causes you to sin, gouge it out and throw it away. It's better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. And then he does the same thing. If your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off. By the way, is he telling you to pluck out an eye and cut off a hand? No, because those are not the parts of the body that make us sin, are they? Where's sin come from? Yeah, here and here. And he's not saying cut out your brain or cut out your heart either. He's using an overstatement to get us to understand we need to repent. But now, you know, I'm going to tell you something, and this is totally true. I've never cheated on my wife, physically. Okay, so now what did I just do? I'm admitting that there were times you look at someone and you think, oh, I wonder what it'd be like to be in bed with that person. And I hope none of you have ever had thoughts like that, but that is easy to have happen. And quite honestly, there's nothing wrong with looking at someone and thinking, whoa, that's a pretty lady or something. Or who's a hunk on the movie screen nowadays? I don't. Tom Cruise? Oh, yeah, he's, yeah. Okay, don't go too far. No, she didn't sin yet, but she was on the verge. Yeah, woo, I heard it. Yeah, I heard something going on there. We cut it off, though. It's okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you can think of Baywatch was one of the most watched TV shows ever, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't for the plot. You know, Charlie's Angels, and I grew up watching that, but so, you know, again, the dialogue was not all that, you know. But they always had at least somebody in a bikini somewhere in each episode. They had to go undercover wearing a bikini. It's hard to hide your gun in there too. I don't know how that works, but you know. But you know, do you remember Jimmy Carter? Oh, for the days of Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter's an honest guy. You know, he's a good Southern Baptist, and you think of in his life after his presidency, all the good stuff he's done. I mean, I really respect him. But his one mistake he made was to grant an interview to Playboy magazine when he was running for re-election. And there is nothing he was going to gain by giving an interview to Playboy magazine. And they asked him if he had ever cheated on his wife. And just like I did, he said, well, I have lusted after other women in my heart. So he was answering the question biblically, but boy, that was a big scandal. Jimmy Carter has lusted. You know, now some of the ones after Jimmy Carter, I love Jimmy Carter, you know. But I'm going to tell you, we went to an all-inclusive, and I may have even mentioned this before, an all-inclusive in Dominican Republic, Punta Cana area or something like that. And I had a hard time going to the beach because a lot of the swimsuits were thong-type swimsuits where you're seeing almost everything, and itsy bitsy teeny weeny yellow polka dot bikini is more than just a song, you know, and that's fine, maybe, not even that for a little girl that doesn't have, you know, much, but that's, I had to, I mean, I didn't want to look because it's easy to lust if you're looking at stuff too long. By the way, pornography is always going to be dangerous because it's designed to make you lust. And just stay away from it, because what goes on in your mind, here's the danger, if it goes on long enough, will start to be expressed in your life. I mean, that is the truth. You think of the people who are child molesters and get arrested. Used to be they'd always find, boxes of Polaroid pictures or something of naked children and all kinds of stuff like that. Nowadays it's all on your computer, of course, but if you look at that for year after year, I'll guarantee you sooner or later you're going to act out.
I always remember what Billy Graham said, and even he struggled with that. I remember reading an article where he said if he was going somewhere and he was alone, he would never step in an elevator.
Yes.
And walk with women. He would always wait till the next one or have somebody with him. And see, even he, that's what always
And what he's doing is protecting himself. You remember how they criticized Mike Pence when he said he wouldn't do meet for a lunch interview with a reporter, a female reporter alone. He'd bring his wife. It's like, of course. I would never want to go out to eat with a woman alone. I mean, my mom, my daughters, sure, but because one, I don't want my wife to ever have doubts about me, and two, I don't want to give the world an opportunity to think evil. It hurts the faith. He was absolutely right, and it prevents temptation from happening. And that's my goal. I don't want to have to deal with stuff that is going to hurt me, my family, the church, and God's kingdom. So let's prevent that stuff from happening. So yeah. So again, thou shalt not commit adultery. Easy to say, yeah, I didn't cheat on my spouse this week. It's tougher to actually keep it. And to keep means to love, honor, and cherish your spouse. If you're married, you've got a call. And that's for husbands to love like Christ loves the church. And that's a beautiful thing. And then for wives, it's to love like that back. Yeah. All right, and I'm not going too far on all this. I could do whole lessons just on each one of the commandments. Thou shalt not steal, and look at Luther's explanation. We are to fear and love God so that we do not take our neighbor's money or property or get them in any dishonest way. Now think about that. In the old days, we used to be able to turn back the odometer. Can you still do that? It's all electronic, so I don't know. Probably not. But I mean, that's stealing. It is a form of stealing. Or if you misrepresent the condition of the car, that's stealing. By the way, if you're at work and on the radio I sing a song, I do the bare minimum, and that's funny song, but I'll tell you what, if you go in and do the bare minimum, you're just there to get a paycheck, and you only work when somebody's watching you, you're stealing. Because, you're getting paid, $10 an hour or whatever the rate is for an hour of work. If you're only giving them a half hour's work, you're stealing from them. And so for Christians, we work hard to honor God and for a paycheck. But there's always a double reason, a double reason. So we're not to take in any dishonest way. But then look at the next part of that. But to help him improve and protect his property and means of making a living. We're the neighborhood watch committee. If Dan Hunsucker's cow gets out, I call him and tell him that. I don't just think, ooh, maybe I can get a truck and then I'll have beef for a year. That's not that. You look out for your neighbors. If you see someone, lurking around your neighbor's bushes, you do something about it. By the way, I'm not really saying go confront, but call your neighbor and call the police or whatever, but let them know what's going on. But so we look out for each other, we help each other, not take. What about gambling? Is gambling stealing? And this really, I'm sneaking ahead, but 9th and 10th commandments deal with coveting. So can you gamble without coveting? Yes. You can. It's hard. So for example, I'm just going to tell, I used to play penny nickel poker with some friends of mine. This is college, I think. I was in college. And we'd play till like 2 in the morning, it was a good time and laugh and all that stuff. And if you had a horrible night, you'd lose $1.80. And if you really won big time, you'd have $2.50, an additional pocket change or something. It really wasn't about the money. And so I did that for years. But then I noticed I was starting to care if I won. I quit. I'd still play cards. I just wouldn't play for money anymore because I was coveting my friends' money. Well, I don't need their pocket change. But when that became more important to me than just hanging out, so I have relatives that would go to, there's a couple people in the church that like to go up to Cherokee and do the slot machines and stuff like that. And I give them a rough time about it, just in a kidding way. But if you're going up there, that can be a form of entertainment. If you go to a movie, what does it cost these days?
$30.
Yeah, if you take a family, it's going to, because it's like some of the movies are $12 or $14. I mean, it's unbelievable.
It was about $70 for him and his brother to go with popcorn and drinks.
Yeah, because Denise and I are members of some club at AMC where we're paying like $24 a month and we can go to 3 movies a week for free. So as long as we go to 2 movies a month, we're actually making money on it. But you know what? Even though it's free, we always buy a bucket of popcorn and we usually get a drink. Now they've made $16 because we have a bucket, you just refill it. But they make $16. That movie wasn't free. I'm paying what I used to pay to go to the movies. But that's entertainment. So and if you have fun playing the slot machine, but you can quit, that's fine. I don't really have a problem with that. And that penny nickel poker, I don't really have a problem with that. But you got to know yourself. And if you start caring too much about getting from someone else, that's a form of stealing. So I just throw that out there. All right, we got to go quick. Ooh, yes. Because I got to finish this. 8th commandment, we shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. Look at what Jesus says. We're to fear and love God so that we do not betray. Betray means to reveal things they told us that were personal and confidential. So in the 5th grade, I noticed that girls were different than boys. I really hadn't thought about that until the 5th grade. I was socially awkward, and there was this little redheaded girl. Who liked a little redheaded girl in the comic strips? Charlie Brown. Come on, you know that. Yes. So I was kind of like a Charlie Brown. And I told one person, my best friend, that I kind of liked her. And he immediately went and told a bunch of other people in our class. And then the little girl heard. And she wrote me a note, precious, said we are now going steady. So, and then later that day, this is how most of my relationships win until Denise. But later that day, we had a movie in science class, and I watched the movie from my desk, which is what you're supposed to do, obeying the rules. And she wrote me a note and said we broke up. And I went home and listened to a Herman's Hermit song. Why does the sun go on shining? Don't they know it's the end of the world? It ended when I lost your love. And I listened to that for like 57 plays, Later it turned out she wanted me to move my desk over by hers, but I still don't think to this day that we were allowed to do that. But that's what she wanted. She wanted me to come sit by her. Yeah, that was. By the way, her name was Lori. We were pretty good friends throughout all the years in middle school and high school and stuff like that. But we never dated. Never ended up dating. The wounds are still there.
Remember you wouldn't move your bed.
Yes, yeah. But so, but quite honestly, my best friend betrayed me. And I was not socially ready for all that other stuff to happen. I mean, I wasn't. So betraying a confidence really can destroy a relationship. So we're not to betray our friends. It goes on, we should not slander. Slander is In legal definition, it means saying something untrue about another person that damages their reputations. Biblically, it's saying anything about a person that damages their reputation, even if it is true. So imagine I know that one time, not that any of you have ever done this, one time you got drunk and, whoo, what a scene, and all that stuff. So if I know that to be true, do I have to go and tell everybody I know about it? No.
Leave well enough alone.
Yeah, and you know what? We have all had things that we just as soon not have people talk about. So to slander, what we call gossip. Now, if you're passing on good stuff about people, pass it on. Anything that's going to enhance their reputation, say that good stuff. But leave all the bad stuff. That's personal. As a pastor, I took a vow of confidentiality when I was ordained, and I take that very seriously. People will come and talk to me about stuff, and I'm not going to tell anyone. I don't tell Pastor Lagutin, I don't tell my wife, I don't tell anyone. I mean, if you tell me something in confidential, it's not going anywhere. And it gets such a chuckle because sometimes people will walk up to Denise and say, well, I suppose your husband told you that I'm having troubles with, and then they tell my wife what they're having troubles with. And my wife's going, no, he didn't tell me anything about that. He wouldn't. And it's not that I want distance between Denise and I, but I want you guys to trust me. Confidentiality is a big, big deal. So we don't want to slander. We don't want to lie about our neighbor or lie to our neighbor. So bearing false witness, but defend him, speak well of him, and explain his actions in the kindest way. Now that's keeping the 8th commandment. Defending. So if you hear people gossiping about someone who's not there, your job is to butt in, B-U-T. And that means you go in and say, well, I don't know about all that stuff, but I want to tell you, when I was sick, he came every day to check on me and brought me chicken noodle soup and homemade bread and whatever. I mean, but you say something to build him back up. And by the way, when you're not chastising him per se, but when you show good works instead of the evil stuff, it changes the conversation. So your job is to butt in with 1 T, not 2. So defend, speak well of him, and explain his actions in his kindest way. So there was a police car, true story, that pulled into the parsonage. I lived right next door to the church up in Michigan. And so police car pulled in and came in, and we talked for a while, and then he had some crosses that he had helped make for a pro-life display, white crosses. And so then he left, and the next Sunday, people heard that I got in trouble with the police this week, and they wanted to know what happened, because there was a police car in my driveway. Yeah, thanks for explaining everything in the nicest way. No, I did not get busted. Yeah, but just, news media is horrible, because if you run for office, everything you do is going to be made to sound horrible. Even, that we just twist into everything. He took a breath today. There's limited air now, climate emergency, and he's out there breathing. Whoa, That's what we do. We explain everything in the worst possible way. And then 9th and 10th commandment. Now again, in the other way of counting the commandments, there's 1 commandment on coveting. I like that there's 2. And one is about coveting people, and one is about coveting things. Why do I like that? Because all sin begins here. It does not begin with my hand. It does not begin with my eye. It begins in my brain. And if we can, famous theologian said, nip it in the bud. Who was that famous theologian? Barney Fife, exactly so. Yeah, we don't think of him as a theologian, but he is. If we can nip our thoughts in the bud, as soon as we start thinking something improper, if we can, by the way, so you have an improper thought, how do you get it out of your head? It is hard, but it can be done. Yeah, now there's a variety of techniques, so mine may be different than the one you heard. But here's what I do. Jesus said to Peter once, "Get behind me, Satan. Your ways are not the ways of God, they're the ways of men." I say that, if I'm alone, I say it out loud. If I'm If I'm with you, I'm saying it in my head. And so I'm identifying that thought as improper, as a sin. And I don't want that sin to remain in me. Then I'm saying a quick prayer. Quick means seconds, maybe even, God help me to get rid of this stuff. But that alone won't do it. If I say don't think about a pink elephant, well, now for the next couple moments, you're in your mind, you're envisioning a pink elephant. So if I just say I don't want to think about this, well, now I'm guaranteed to think about it. But unless you replace that thought with something else, you have to put your mind on something. And Philippians teaches us that whatever is good, right, praiseworthy, excellent, think about such things. So when I used to have trouble, I was always fascinated by monster movies like Frankenstein, but then I'd have nightmares for days. And so I had to learn a technique when I was like 7 or 8 or something, where I would so dread going to sleep, I'd say, God, help me not to think, have the nightmares. Help me not to think about monsters today or something like that. And as soon as you say that, you're thinking about monsters again. So I had to learn to replace the stuff I didn't want to think about with something else. So in my mind, I'd go through a Red Skelton. How many of you remember Red Skelton? Yeah, some of you are too young. You don't even. Yeah, you're so young. It's nice when people call you that, so just rejoice. Red Skelton was a clean comedian, and he had a TV show. It was hilarious. It's kind of like a Carol Burnett type of person, just really nice and fun. All right, that's good, because if I had to explain that too, I really was going to get depressed. I am so old, But I would run through one of the skits, and I don't remember it anymore because I haven't had to use this for a long time. But I pretty much knew every line in that skit that he was doing. And so I'd think about that, and it'd make me smile and make me laugh. Well, you know what now? Most of the time I just start saying the 23rd Psalm to myself. It's 6 verses. You probably already know it. If not, you're so familiar with it you could memorize it in 10 minutes probably. But I just say that in my head. And I think about God's promise, God's promise, God's promise, because it's filled with promises. Or right now I can think about my grandchildren, and that puts a smile, right? Huh? Yeah, puts a smile on your face. You can think about your kids. Although sometimes when I thought about my kids, that might raise my blood pressure a little bit, depending on the moment.
The good times.
Yeah, think about the good times, yeah.
That's like Friday night I heard. I told Kathy, I'm by myself and I was scared. I've never been afraid before, and I was afraid somebody's gonna break in on me. Don't ask me why. I had visions all night of somebody busting my door down.
And see, once you get that thought in your head,
So
sticks.
finally, I remember my verse that I've got it, Psalms 4:8. In peace I will lie down and sleep, for you alone, O Lord, will keep me safe.
Yeah.
And I said that, and I said that,
see,
and I said that.
that's it. That is exactly what I'm talking about. And you have your verse. Like I said, mine's the 23rd Psalm. You don't have to use that one. But you have a verse or two that you have memorized. So you don't even have to turn on the light if you're having, because you know what? During the day we stay busy, so it's easy to keep our thoughts away from the stuff that scare us.
I've never been afraid before. I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened. I don't know.
Yeah, and there's little triggers, and sometimes we don't even notice what the triggers are. But what matters is the solution, because it does work. It does work. All right. And I was just thinking we're going to end. All right, so next week we will actually start on lesson 2. Yay! Woo, woo, woo! There is a God, and He is merciful. Yeah. All right, let's close in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank You so much for the opportunity to study Your Word. Help us to know the truth about ourselves, and help us to remember the truth about You, that You are loving and forgiving. And help us to always hang on to Jesus. In His name we pray. Amen.